All right, hello everyone. I've been wanting to make this video for a while now. I'm wearing this MotorPixel shirt, and that's not by coincidence. It's because I want to talk about a web page that I created and designed, and have been collecting VINs for primarily Lamborghini Gallardo with a friend of mine, Patrick, who's in Europe. The two of us have been collecting VINs for the last several years. We now have a little over 40% of worldwide VINs collected, and we have what we believe to be around 70% or more of the USA VINs collected. So I want to talk about the website, show kind of how it works, implore you guys to maybe add your own cars to the registry, and then also show the report page and talk about some of the statistics, things like transmission data, color data, year, model, etc., etc. So we can go into all of that. Hopefully you will find this video interesting. There's a lot of numbers, but there are some charts and some graphs as well. So hopefully you find it interesting, especially if you own one of these cars or are looking for one of these cars. I think it will be very useful. So let's start. Okay, so the first thing to do is to go to motorpixel.co. It's not .com, but this website is the site that we are now using to store all of the VINs that we are collecting for all the 80s, 90s, and 00 cars, in particular the Gallardo, which is the main car that obviously we're going to be talking about today, and that is the main interest for the site. But if you scroll down, you'll see some information about the site, some links to the About page and my personal story, and then you'll see kind of recent cars that have been added. So here are some recent, Gallardos that were discovered for sale. For example, if I click this one, you'll see this was listed on Auto Trader recently, today, with about 9,700 miles and the price that it's being asked, and then tons of photos. And of course, you can click on photos and you can arrow through them, or click on the sides to scroll through, or click to close, and then of course go back out. So some interesting things with the website. In addition to kind of showing you the recent vehicles, there's a web search, and then there's a couple of things I want to quickly just talk about before we get into kind of the Gallardo report page. First of all, if you're not logged in, haven't made an account, you won't be able to see the full report. So I do recommend both for report viewing as well as to have full search functionality that you're going to log in. So I'm going to click login, and I'm going to do that, which I will edit this part out for obvious reasons. And then when I log in, now I don't have that big header section, and I have full access to the rest of the site as well. Some of the things that are for free, even if you don't make an account, I have a bunch of old PDFs up here. My father had a Countach back in the day, and Diablo and things like that, and so I've scanned in a number of old exotic car flyers or newsletters, including the old Lamborghini kind of Club America magazines. So this is like from 2001, this one's from 96, and I have others I still need to scan in. This one's from 88, for example. And these are just, huge PDFs that you can basically download to your heart's content and look at. Yeah, but it's kind of fun because they've got a lot of old, look at this, here's the potential new Diablo that was going to come out. That was the concept vehicle. So yeah, so lots of cool stuff just on the site just for that. So I'll go back. And again, you can read the About page. If you have a profile set up, you can change options such as changing your password, of course, and other things such as like how you want to search, what kind of results you get. You can also track cars. So if there's cars that you want to follow, it will show up here, and you'll get an email if there's a vehicle. These are like friends' cars or other interesting cars that I've found or seen online that I just am kind of tracking. And that way you'll get notified if somebody else, say, updates information on that particular vehicle. So just as a quick example then of searching, let's say you know a VIN or a partial VIN, like I'll use my car 04007 Gallardo. I'll search for that, and then I'll see here are the matches that match that number. If I knew the full VIN, I could of course type that in and it would come up right away with that link only. And then I'll see here's the information on each of these cars. So for each car, the website is storing the VIN information, and then it's auto parsing, and I'll show this in a minute. In fact, let me copy this for a second. And what we're going to do is we have for the Gallardo, myself and Patrick, who is basically helping to run this, and he has an Excel version of this data. I have this version on the database here on the server. And so we're constantly vetting with each other and making sure we're in sync. But basically, we have a very specific kind of label that we're using for the model name so that we can do the report in a proper way. And then, of course, it's storing the transmission, the year, the color, if we know the color information, as well as the parsed kind of region. In some cases, we're changing the region, and of course, then the engine information. Um, if you wanted to modify it, you could click this little edit icon or edit VIN. Anyone can modify any of these cars. Obviously, if please don't modify the model unless you know what you're doing, unless you have to. But we'll see it and we'll update it if need be. And then of course you can simply update things. You can drag and drop photo or photos to here, and then if you click submit or whatever, it will come back. And of course, that data would be updated if I had put something in. In addition, there's tons of history or details that you can add in. So you can add new entries. So if I wanted to add a new history piece here, you could go here. I could put where's the car located, what date is it from, any text, and again, you could put one or more photos. You can either click here and do the browser, or you could drag and drop. So let me just hit back because we're not going to do that. But you can see like I've uploaded a number of photos of my car over time to the site, and that includes things like when the clutch was done, so that people who may be interested in the car in the future, if I ever sell, would obviously have information to see what was done and when it was done. So this is a great way to kind of see history on various cars. Now, one of the main reasons before we get to the report page is to actually both add vehicles and search for vehicles. So if you have a car and your VIN is not on here, so you search for your VIN and you're not finding it, it would be awesome if you would hit the add vehicle button. And what you'll see is like as you start to type out the VIN, right? Z8, well, if I could type today, VHW, G, etc., etc. I'm going to paste my VIN and you'll see that starting to parse it out. So if I just paste that full VIN in, you'll see it will have parsed out the way that we want the model data, the transmission, etc. And then I could just put color information, etc. And of course, add photos. And then once I do this, the car would be added. And then of course, you could search for the VIN as well. And then it will show up once you start adding photos and all of that as well. Those will show up too. So please, if you have a vehicle that you're interested in adding, especially if it's a Gallardo, please do so. All right, so let's talk about the main two parts of this, which is searching and reporting. So first of all, before we even get into the report, you could search. So for example, my car is an 06. Maybe I want to know how many 2006 in the Gallardo exist. I can start with that. I'll just type 2006 Gallardo. I can see there's 29 pages and I got 713 matches. Some of them we don't have pictures for. Some of them we do. Obviously, if we don't have photos, it's a little more suspicious, but we've tried to vet most of the VINs. And we've either collected this data via an Excel spreadsheet that came to us. So where did this data come from? A lot of this data started with other users on Lambo Talk forum who provided the initial kind of spreadsheet that we started with. And then we've been going through by either hand. And then eventually what happened was I was like, this sucks by hand. I wrote a little web bot, a web crawler, and a bot that basically goes online and is finding a lot of these things. I'm still manually adding some, like here's a damaged car that was obviously appears to be salvaged. So some of this data is added by hand, but a lot of it is added through our automatic bot that I'm running once or twice a week. And it's searching for cars that are for sale. So if you see something like upload by MotorPixel bot, here's one from Bring a Trailer. So it's also looking at Bring a Trailer information and putting some of that data on here as well. As you can see, this was from May of this year, and it sold for 96K with 18K miles. So again, we're trying to vet the data to be correct. When there's photos, we're definitely more assured that the car is a real VIN, et cetera, et cetera. We had another user who actually went to a 2004 database site and basically generated VINs, and anything that came back with proper documentation, we then were able to take. And so we have a lot of the 2004 cars, I would say, from in the USA as well. Now, what's interesting is if you could get more specific, you can see here from my search history some of the things that I've searched for. So, for example, 2006 Gallardo Orange USA manual coupe, right? So if I do that and I'll hit search, I'll see that there's only 11 2006 known in the USA cars right now that we have currently discovered in the coupe form, right? If I were to get rid of the word coupe at the end of this search, I could change that to spider, and then we'll see that there's 6 of those. So there's actually even less. This one we don't have a photo for. And if I get rid of, say, the word spider and I just leave it off, then I'll see all the matches. So I'll see spiders, all 17 of the spiders, and of course the coupes. And of course I can also get rid of USA, which means that it will find cars all over the place. Although in this case, it looks like, oh, there's one in Canada. So that we have one extra car that we currently know about. I'm sure there's more than that, obviously. But most of the data, as you'll see when we get to the report information, is coming from USA VINs. This is a majority of what we have. So this is really useful if you wanted to search for, say, like, I don't know, anything interesting. Like, let's do Gallardo 2007. And color-wise, I recommend you use the generic color because sometimes we don't have the full color name. But if you want it to be very specific, like Verde Ithaca, or just Verde, let's just say actually, oh, and I'll hit enter. Here is the 2007, and here's Verde Ithaca cars. And you can see that when the VIN parser sees colors, when you add the color of the actual color of the car, the website itself will, on the back end, automatically detect that and put in kind of a generic color so that you can search with a generic term as well. So if I just search for green, we should have the same or more matches. Yeah, so it's the same. In fact, if I just look for Gallardo green, well, you see here that there's 168 cars around the world that we've discovered so far. And again, you could get more specific. So if I wanted to look up like, I don't know, LP, green, and let's do coupes, and let's do USA only, then you're seeing there's 69. Now, of course, LP here is going to match pre-LP and LP. So if you were looking for how many LP 560, say, then I could change that to LP 560, and then I can see now there's only 16 LP 560s that are in green in the USA potentially that we know about. So that's where some of this data, and you're going to see this in the report page, that's how you can kind of introspect and get even more details than potentially what the report page is showing you, or at least see it specifically like which cars. And again, you need to make a free account. The account is free. There's no data that's stored other than the website storing your username, email, etc., just so that I can have a login. And I'm doing that purely so that we can protect the database so we don't get weird spammers and things like that, like logging in here and trying to add junk data. Okay, so I'll click on the top bar here. I'll go back to the main page. You can see the recent cars that were either edited. Here's the one that I fake edited, so now that's my car on top. But let's go to the report page. You click on the report button. This will take you to the report page. Right now we only have a Gallardo report, although at some point I may add other vehicles. Because again, I am storing a lot of like 80s and 90s cars, from Countach to Diablo to Ferrari 308s and 360s and everything in between. So if you click on the Gallardo report, this talks a little bit about where some of the data came from and the fact that we're trying to be as accurate as we can be with it. And what's interesting again is, Lamborghini, the reason we're doing this is Lamborghini doesn't have data for especially the pre-LPs, but my understanding is even really LPs, of what cars and VINs exist. So we know that there's 14,022 cars total made for Gallardo, but we don't totally know how many are in the USA. So for example, this page also, by the way, builds itself live. So as a car gets added or data up here changes, like if we change the color of a car, etc., you come back to this page. When you load it, it is lively, like literally live recreated on the fly. So as of right now, when I'm recording this video, we know that there's 14,000 vehicles, as I mentioned, and we know that we've collected about 55,637 total cars, which then is, of course, 40.2% worldwide total. And so we're missing about 8,385 cars that we still don't have VINs for, that are still out there. But this is a huge number. We started, I think it was 20 or 30%, and we've gone up by 10% over the last couple of years. Again, thank you to Patrick in Switzerland for collecting what he's finding in Europe and elsewhere, and helping me out as well. So, okay, so now we can start looking at what is the data that we have collected, and particularly we're going to focus on USA for the most part, just because, again, we've collected more of that. So how many have we collected? So for the USA, let me actually make this font a little bigger so that you guys can see this on the screen a little easier. Okay, so with the cars that we've collected, what we've seen now is that we are going to have to estimate how many cars are in the US because we don't really know. Based on searching online and reading things, we are guessing that there's 41% of the total Gallardo built. So 41% of this 14K VINs, which would give us basically 5,750 cars as an estimate for what's in the USA. So that's an estimate of 41% of the worldwide total going to the US. Of that, then, we have now collected 4,153 VINs. So we're still missing about 1,600, just under, we think. And that gives us pretty good accuracy because we are at what we believe to be about 72%, a little bit higher, of the actual collected VINs for the USA. And again, we've retagged some of the kind of in between cars, like the kind of cars that we're finding in Japan. Technically, the VINs are only encoded as U, C, or E. So it's only one of these three, and E is kind of the whole rest of the world. But we've started kind of updating for location some of the VINs that we found. So there's 25 cars that we found so far in Japan and elsewhere. And then for the most part, it's Europe, Canada, and of course, you can see the majority here is the USA that we found that 73% for. Okay, so now let's get into some more interesting data, which is probably gets to be a little bit more interesting for people, which is what kind of car, what kind of transmission, colors, and all of that. So for the worldwide, what we're seeing so far is that with pre-LP and LP, there's around 2,000 versus 1,400 coupes. So there's about 3,500 total coupes. Spider, there's about 2,000. You can see the numbers there. Not going to bore you with this, but you can see again, there's a pie chart that's showing you how many coupes are pre-LP, coupes are LP, et cetera, et cetera. Now, again, for interest's sake, we'll get a little bit more into that with transmission as we get into the US. And again, I want to just caveat that all this data is for what we have collected. As mentioned, we still have over 50% of VINs to find, so who knows what is still out there and what the proportions would end up being. But for what we have found today, and again, think we have found a significant number for the US, the data gets more accurate. So for worldwide data, what we're seeing right now for manual versus EGear is interesting. So, and I like to break the pre-LP into kind of early and late, because a lot of the early cars had manual transmissions, but they also have the longer gearing and the longer steering ratio versus the 2006 to 2008, which were updated with tighter steering ratio, tighter gear ratios, and then of course the LPs, which are super rare in manual transmission. So you can see that right now the ratio of early cars, pre-LPs, which we have only 640 that we found in EGear and about 400 in manual, that starts to drop. So by the time and again, this is worldwide right now. As you get to the later pre-LPs, these EGears go up, and then you'll see the manuals drop to 285, 285 total worldwide for the later years. And then the LP is only 100, a little over 100, 106 right now that we found worldwide. So then here's the percentages, and you can see within that year range, here's the percentage manual. So this is 403 versus 640, that's 38%. But if you compare it to all the cars collected, of all the kind of manual collected cars, that's 7%. So if you add that to like this total number for this data, and then if you compare it to like the full, so to be clear, this is 7%, meaning that 400 out of the total number of cars that we collected. And remember that if we scroll up, we collected, I think it was 5,750 VINs, right? So of what we know so far, out of all of the cars, 7% are early pre-LP manuals worldwide, 5% are basically later model pre-LP manuals, and then 1.8% are LP manuals worldwide. And then if you were to say that every other car that we're going to find in the future potentially is EGear, which probably won't be, but it may become more that way, then these percentages drop. So this is if you take this number, 403 manual pre-LP cars, and you put that into the 14,000 that we know exist out in the world. So far, we have only discovered 2.8% pre-LP cars are actually manual between 2004 to 2005, or about 5% total for all pre-LP. So if you add the pre-LP 2004 to 2005 and then the 2006 to 8, we add that together, you can see that it's actually about 5% of the worldwide total, and it's about 12% for what we've discovered so far, though. Which is a pretty big number, but still not huge. And again, you can see that with a pie chart if you care. All right, so now let's get more details, because the USA, we get more accurate, as mentioned, because we have collected what we think is around 72% of the VINs. So here what we can see is in the USA, a lot of those cars that were manuals are in the US, and we found even less EGears, but than we had above. But so these are the numbers in the USA of what we've discovered so far. So overall, there's about 2,000 pre-LP EGear cars and about 500 being manuals. Now, when you get in there, a good portion, 343, are the 2004 to 2005. That drops significantly when you're going to the 2006 to 2008. That's just a little over half that, right? So 180 cars are 2006 to 2008 in gated manual. And this is a known number. This 59 here was vetted by another user, old school on Lambo Talk, and he verified this with Lamborghini North America. We know for a fact that there are only 59 OEM gated LP Gallardo in the USA. So this is a proper, now that doesn't count conversion cars and cars that people are manually converting of LP, but of the OEM LP, those are the cars. And so you could see within that year range of 2009 to 2014, that's 3.8% of the VINs of that section are manual. And of course, if you compare that to all of the kind of cars that we've collected in the USA, then that drops, right? So effectively, if you're comparing that to the full 5750, that's only 1% of the cars. And then over here, if you look at kind of what's been collected again, this here again is what we've collected. So out of all the VINs that we have collected, right, we've only collected 72%. This is the percentage that we actually are at. If we extrapolate out to the full number that we know or we think exists in the US, then those numbers drop because potentially a lot of the upcoming cars will be EGear cars. We think that we've caught a lot of the manuals, although we are still finding manuals here and there. So to be accurate, the proper percentages for what's been collected is this column right here, right? So we could say that 8% of the VINs that we have found so far for pre-LP cars, 2004 to 2005, that's about 8%. If you look at the later pre-LP, that's only 4%. And then again, if you look at LP, that's truly only 1.42% of LP cars are actually gated manuals out of all of the VINs that we have discovered so far from 2004 to 2014 in the USA. Hopefully that makes sense. So this is a very specific percentage within this little two numbers here. This is a percentage of all of the VINs that we found. So it's this number into all of the VINs that we've discovered so far. And then this is if we divide by instead 5750 to get the percentage of what we think is out there. And again, you can see that, and you can see how small like the EGear pre-LP and then here manual LP is just this tiny sliver. And again, if you look at this chart, you can see like manual, pre-LP versus manual early. That manual early is still a pretty small chunk, and it gets even smaller, 4.3% as noted, when you're looking at the later model pre-LPs. Okay, so let's go deeper into this and let's look at it by body type, which is also interesting because a lot of people want a very specific coupe or spider, depending on what you desire, in certain model years of manual transmission. So we know that, again, we had 343 manual pre-LP, 180 later, and then 59. So if you look at those, this is how that breaks up. The 59, there's only 4 LP spiders and 55 coupes. So if you have a spider version of an LP car, you have a very rare car. In addition, all of the early model years, if you know this, the spider convertible version of the Gallardo was not released until 2006. So by definition, every car from 2004 to 2005 with the longer gearing and steering ratio will be a coupe. So all 343, that's the big part of that chart right there. And then when you get into the 2006 to 2008, for what we have found so far, there's only 82 coupes in the USA that we've discovered, and it's just shy of 100. There's 98 manual spiders in the USA. So there's that. And then you can start to get more interested by exact year. So if you're very interested to know, like, okay, my specific year, say like my car was the 2006, I know that there's only 59 coupes, and then you can see it actually drops dramatically right now in 2007, goes up a little bit in 2008. So the majority of the cars that are gated manual in the kind of later pre-LP range are actually in the 2006 year, and they definitely drop off in 2007 and 8. Again, for what we've discovered so far. Again, this is still data that we are still finding and discovering and collecting cars. And here you can see model years for the LP, and then of course the early pre-LPs as well. All right, color is also an interesting thing to look at. Again, we have a number of cars that we don't have photos for, we don't have data for. So while we think the VIN is accurate, we just have other. So that's a big chunk here. That's a significant number. But you can see, and I've tried to color code the chart to match the colors that we're talking about. So green is the green pie chart, red, which again is any red. So that would be Rosso Festo, Rosso Vic, Rosso, whatever red covers that. You know, Giallo Midas, Giallo Halus is covered in yellow, etc. If you wanted to get more specific, you would need to go and do the search function and look for Halus, Giallo, or Giallo, you know, etc. Whatever specific color it is that you're looking for. So you can see that, you know, the rare color, you know, green cars is only 164. This is worldwide that we're looking at here. There's a couple weird, interesting cars that have gold paint or were painted purple, etc. That exist out there as well, which you could search for. In the USA, then we get a little bit more specific because again, we have more percentages. You can see that that green percent is just 2.9% of the color cars. Orange is like 11%. And very interesting, black, white, and yellow seem to be the dominant colors that we've found so far. And very interesting, of course, blue and some of the grays are actually very kind of rare as well, and as red. So I would say red, green, gray, and blue probably are more of the rare color in the currently discovered USA Gallardo. Now, when you get into transmission, potentially you also want to know, okay, well, how many are of this color in a specific transmission? We have that data on the report page as well. So here you can see by manual versus EGear for what we found in the USA. So for example, orange manual cars, there's only 75 in the USA. Green manual cars, there's only 8. So if you have one of the manual transmission Verde Ithaca cars, we all envy you. There you go. Again, for data collected so far, that doesn't mean that there's probably not maybe a dozen or who knows, half a dozen more sitting out there. But this is what we've found so far, which covers, you know, a good portion of VINs. And then you can also go by model year. So this is model year colors. And then the same way sorted by EGear specifically, and then perhaps more interesting by transmission of manual type in the USA. So for example, orange Gallardo in 2006, there's 17. In 2007, there's 8, and then it drops off to 9, etc. So again, an interesting way to kind of look at this by model year. So I will have to vet this because this is showing, yeah, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so that is the 8 green cars right there. So there's, of the green cars in the USA, 3 are 2005, early pre-LP, 3, and then this one here in 2007, so 2006 and 2007. So there's 4 green manual transmission later LP cars, and then there's only 1 LP gated manual green Verde car that's out there that we know of. Yeah, so again, this is kind of an interesting way to see kind of how rare or not certain colors are. You can see yellow is pretty dominant, and then it kind of falls off to black and then silver for 2004, for example. All right, and lastly, we have some interesting data that people are always wondering what's going on with the market. Are these cars going to go up or down? As you can see, I think these cars tend to be more rare than people think. You know, when you're comparing to say like a Ferrari 360, which in my mind covers, you know, a 360 versus an F430, there's about half each of the number of Gallardo made, but the Gallardo also covered both periods of time. So I would say that there's very comparable, and those cars are definitely going up. So it's vertically listed here, but you can see the last 12 months, so October 2023, September, August, what the website that we have here is finding as far as what listings get added. So this is when a new car is discovered or a new listing is discovered, it gets added here, and it's kind of showing you the averages. And then there's a nice kind of chart on the bottom, and you can highlight for the previous 12 months what cars you're seeing. So if I scroll down just a little bit so you can see the bottom of the chart here, I could look at, say, the LP manual cars. You can see are up in the $300,000 range, 280 to 300 asking. And again, these are either asking prices. Sometimes they're reserve not met bid prices. Sometimes they are for sale prices. And if you'll see in a moment, you could get more data. But you can see here, like early pre-LP cars, there were a couple for sale every month in the first part of 2023, but it's been more sporadic. So there were no new cars listed in May. That's why there's kind of a gap in there. Let me turn this off for a second. So if I click these, I can turn these off. And so here's the 2006 to 2008 cars. And you can see the prices here. Then here's one that was listed for 150, 157. And then there's one here that's listed for 111. That's just recent. If I look for the LP manual cars, that's obviously these much higher numbers up here. And then we can add in the pre-LP manuals as well. That has more cars for sale from 2004 to 2005. Some of these are actually salvage asks. I think this one was actually a damaged car, etc. So you can see kind of the trend of kind of mostly flat, maybe a little bit raised. But you can see kind of where prices are falling between the 120 to 150 range in general for the kind of gated manual cars, depending on mileage and year. So there's that. And then if you scroll down, the recent 2 months listings are showing here. And so you can kind of scroll down. Like let's say we wanted to find like, hey, where's the previous manual cars that were for sale? So here's one that was 2004 pre-LP. I don't know. We'll click this and just see what it is. So this one had airbag deployed and some cosmetic issues noted. And that was listed on eBay for 115K. Let me go back here, give it a second to regenerate the chart. The 2008 here, this is only $56,000 because this is from an exotic auto recycling spot. So you can see this car is actually damaged. Otherwise, I'm sure it would be a lot more money. Yeah, so again, an interesting way to both find potentially new listings if you're looking for a specific car. Here's a car that was listed down in, looks like Florida. And so this car was listed back in October, so earlier this month, just a couple weeks back, asking 165 with 20,000 miles on it. Yeah, so, and again, you've got photos and all this data. So this is a great way to kind of come back and see like, you know, if you're ever listing your car, how rare are they? You can see actually, look, here's some green cars that were for sale. Here's one in Sacramento. This one had some, it looks like rear end damage at one point, as was noted. So yeah, hopefully you are finding this video interesting. And again, just a reminder that if you want some more of that specific data, you can search very specifically. So again, if I look for, let's just do a search for Hayless, Gallardo, and let's do pre-LP. I think we have it as pre-LP. Yeah. So here I see that we've only noted that of the yellow cars, only 33 are specifically known to be Giallo Hayless. And again, you could get more specific if I wanted to do pre-LP Spider, say, then there's only 17 in Hayless color. Now, again, some of the cars we noted as yellow only because we don't actually know which Giallo it is, if it's Giallo Midas, Giallo Haydus, or something else. So if I look for yellow, Gallardo, pre-LP, Spider, then here we can see now that there's 244 cars. And again, I can page through these, each page, and kind of go through them. And again, a plea to you guys who have Gallardo, if you don't mind putting your VIN in, the only data that's stored on here is the VIN. We aren't storing any other personal information, etc. It would be a great help because we will start to flesh out what vehicles are made. By the way, you can also search for damaged cars. So we are noting damage or destroyed. And so that's an interesting way too, to also just see what's kind of out there, what's been found. Like here's a Grigio Proteus car. This had some damage on the right side. That was noted. But some of the cars definitely have more visual kind of ways. Here's one you can definitely see for history. So this one was seen in the Netherlands apparently back a couple months ago. That's when we picked it up. Yeah, so it's another note too, is that some of these cars are literally destroyed. So there's a really good question as to like, I mean, again, if you're looking, there's what, 240 some cars that have some level of damage. In this case, it's totally destroyed. So if I look for, and I'm trying to denote the ones that are clearly destroyed with the word destroyed in it. You don't have to put caps in, but you can see like there's 27 cars. So again, as the cars exist on this planet, there will be less and less of them, and or as they are used for parts. So there you go. It's very, very sad. Gallardos. Sorry if one of those was your car. All right. One other thing I forgot to mention, of course, is the cars are noted as specific variants. So, for example, like special edition SEs, things like that. Now, obviously, SE may match like Serapis, etc. So, I probably need to go into the report page and add a little bit more specific details and search that people can click on to find that data. But for example, like if you wanted to look for final edition cars, final edition, right? You can search for that. You can see we have 242 worldwide so far. You can also search for like Superleggera. And again, that's a known number that there's what 172, I believe, or so made for the USA. But you can see here worldwide how many cars that we found for both pre-LP, Superleggera, post-LP, Superleggera, etc. So you can definitely do some of those searches yourself as you kind of use the website. Again, you won't get full results if you're not logged in. So if I were to log out and I were to type in Gallardo Superleggera, you're going to see that it tells you that there's 27 pages, but it doesn't tell you the total quantity. It just shows that there's 25 plus matches altogether. You could probably do the math more or less, figure out how many there are, but you really need to log in to get the full usage of the website. All right, thank you for watching that video. I hope that you found it interesting. I hope the data there is useful to you. Again, it's totally free. And again, if you're available and you have a VIN that you can add or any photos of cars that you found that are kind of the right venue as far as Lamborghini Gallardo or other cars from the 80s and 90s, please, by all means, add that to the registry. Thank you so much.